We have the clearest indication yet that special counsel Robert Mueller is nearly done with his almost 2-year investigation and that the end game here is near. Sources say the Justice Department is preparing to announce as early as next week that Attorney General Bill Barr has received Mueller's confidential report. And soon after that announcement, Barr will review the findings and then submit his own summary to Congress. We have crime and justice reporter Shimon Prokupecz, justice reporter Laura Jarrett, and senior justice correspondent Evan Perez with us. So we know that the timing could change on this. Walk us through what, by regulation, the Attorney General has to do once he receives this report from Robert Mueller.
Well, so the way the regulations work for the Justice Department is that the special counsel submits a report to the Attorney General. It's a confidential report to the Attorney General, and then he reviews it and decides what he can report publicly or to the members of Congress. Now, there's a lot of discussions going on inside the Justice Department about exactly how to handle this. We don't know how long the Mueller report is, what it's going to contain per se, what the contours of it are, the findings. But we know that's what the Justice Department is prepared to do, essentially to take a look at what he says and then submit something to members of Congress. Again, if you heard Bill Barr during his congressional testimony recently, he said he wants to make sure that as much of this is made public, is provided to members of Congress. I think he wants that whatever goes to Congress is also going to be made public, because he does know that there's a responsibility the Justice Department has to provide some answers to exactly what Mueller has been up to. So here's what we expect. We expect that it's going to happen probably within the next week. Timing could slide before and after. The president, as you know, is leaving for a trip to Vietnam. And so I think people inside the Justice Department are very wary of stepping on the president as he makes an international trip. So I think this is how we expected it to happen.
When Evan says there are discussions about how to handle this, I mean, that really comes down to what is in this report, right? Because if there's something that is very bad for the president, it would necessitate actually more of a public airing or a congressional airing, right?
I think part of the challenge for the Justice Department is that typically they don't disclose what they call derogatory information about uncharged individuals. And under the regulations, the special counsel's office is supposed to explain all of their prosecution decisions, but also their declinations. So decisions not to prosecute people. It may also have classified information in the report. And so that's the challenge for Barr, is figuring out exactly how to slice it and dice it and what to give Congress. And during his Senate confirmation hearings, he was questioned at length about this because, of course, Congress wants everything. So let's remind our viewers of what exactly Barr said and how he tried to thread the needle on this.
Yeah, and
I also believe it is very important that the public and Congress be informed of the results of the special counsel's work. My goal will be to provide as much transparency as I can, consistent with the law. I can assure you that where judgments are to be made, I will make those judgments based solely on the law, and I will not let personal, political, or other improper interests influence my decision.
So once again, they're consistent with the law. Well, what exactly does that mean for what Congress gets to see?
And there's no matter how you cut this, no matter what the findings are, there's a huge appetite after 2 years, and we've talked a lot about the findings. We've talked about every single move that is publicly available to us. A lot of folks look back at what happened with Hillary Clinton and her email investigation, a model for when there was such an appetite, Shimon, to get information. In the end, Jim Comey, basically, he ended up speaking publicly and saying, look, this isn't a case that anyone would really put up. However, he talked...
He stepped in it.
He did. He wanted to make clear that what she had done was not okay. And they don't want a repeat of something like that.
They do not. This is the big thing here. You know, as Evan and Laura know, that in talking to people at the Department of Justice, the big concern is they do not want to do what James Comey did. They do not want to hold a press conference and tell people everything that people connected to the president may have done wrong, what the president may have done in this case. If people are not charged, the Department of Justice has a long-standing policy that they don't talk about anything that involves people who have not been charged. And that's what we saw in the James Comey press conference, right? And William Barr has said publicly that he was against what James Comey did. Rod Rosenstein has been against what Comey did. Other veterans of the Department of Justice were very much against what Comey did. And so as a result of that, they are very concerned about doing and making that kind of mistake again. The other thing, I think what's important in all of this, that this is the clearest indication to us that Mueller is done, and that most of the investigative steps that he undertook are now complete. There are some indications that we haven't seen the grand jury, the Mueller grand jury that's been overseeing this investigation, has not been seen since Roger Stone was indicted, so that's about a month ago. We've seen other signs that things may be wrapping up at Mueller's office. And that is the most important thing, that after all this time, we're all going to want answers. People are going to want to know what exactly went on here. And I think everyone's been cautioning us that we may not get all the answers we want, that this report may not contain the answers that people are looking for necessarily. And the other thing I want to point out is that there are parts of this investigation that are still going to live well beyond Mueller.
Sure. There's a bunch of, it's almost in a way like spin-off series, right? And one of the indications, you guys are saying this is the clearest indication yet, but if you're following this day in, day out as you are, you've been seeing other things. Boxes of documents that have been going off to other prosecutors who will be looking at some of these spin-off cases.
Yeah, we've seen some of the prosecutors who work on the Mueller team depart the Mueller team. So we've been seeing sort of a winnowing down of the team that's been doing this investigation. And as Shimon and Laura have talked about, I think one of the things that we've seen is certainly the pieces of this investigation have gone to other offices. We only know about a few of them, but there are many more pieces that have been farmed out to other U.S. Attorney's office. And here's the deal. I think Mueller is, and certainly the Justice Department leadership is very aware that they cannot have a special counsel that goes on forever. And so one of the things that they've been trying to do is figure out how to make sure that the nucleus of this investigation that Mueller was really appointed to do, right, which is what happened in 2016, and sort of that part of the investigation is handled by Mueller, and then the things that are more complicated, things that have to do with perhaps financial issues, perhaps could be handled by the Southern District of New York, by the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Washington, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Alexandria, Virginia. All of those teams are still going to be working. And then keep in mind, there's a counterintelligence aspect to this that may be going on for years and years, and we may never see, simply because they want to know what the Russians are still up to.
And I just want to loop in our viewers again real quick, because the Mueller report, clearest indications yet that they're preparing at the DOJ to receive this as early as next week. The clearest indication that this is wrapping up. Shimon?
I want to make a point. So this doesn't mean that the investigation of the president or the people associated with the president is in any way over, because there's still this very much a lingering problem for him out of New York, out of the Southern District of New York. And I think, as Evan has made this point several times, that is one of the things that concerns the president and the president's people much more, people close to him, than this Mueller investigation. That is where he still is facing a lot of jeopardy. He's already been implicated in one crime there. They've just now subpoenaed all the financial records
for the inauguration.
They're still working through the Trump organization and that investigation, and the hush money payment investigation is still ongoing. So there's still a lot that's going to go on.
There's a similar issue with Roger Stone, the president's longtime confidant and advisor. We saw the D.C. U.S. attorneys joining that case so that it sort of provides a seamless transition for when Mueller is done with the investigation. You have someone already on the case who can take over. And so all the questions about whether there would be a superseding indictment, whether Stone could have other charges that he might face down the line, D.C. prosecutors can handle all of that without Mueller.
When the special counsel, when ultimately a report, I think of Bill Clinton, when Congress was informed of what was going on, there were also supporting documents that weren't even in the report, that were sort of housed away, but that members of Congress could have access to. A lot of information, actually information that might have actually motivated their impeachment more than what was in the actual report. So all of this extra information that maybe doesn't find a home in the report, even to the DOJ, even to Bill Barr, or in the report that Bill Barr sends to Congress, what happens to it?
Right. I mean, that's the big question. I think members of Congress are going to have a lot to say about this, because they're not going to like the answer. I think the initial answer from Justice Department is, look, we're going to handle this like every other investigation. We're going to tell you what steps we've taken, but where we've declined to bring charges, we're not going to just let it all out. So I think you're going to see some litigation.
They have in other cases, though.
Right. There's going to be legal battles.
There's going to be legal battles.
So here's the thing. In the Hillary Clinton investigation, remember, the FBI did wind up releasing a lot of 302s, a lot of information that they normally wouldn't. So it could be that what they did there has set the precedent, perhaps, for some legal battles going forward about getting our hands on the documents used in the Trump investigation.
I think this is also why you see this bipartisan push on Capitol Hill to have a different sort of regulation going forward. We've seen Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, along with Senator Chris Coons, saying, look, we need way more than what these regulations provide, because under the regulations, Barr can say, Mueller's done, goodbye. I don't have to tell you any more.
He can give them a one-pager that says, this is what Mueller did, look at the indictments in the public record.
Say that won't happen?
It.
I mean,
oh my God, can you imagine?
Could you imagine that would be the answer?
I can't even imagine, and
but
yet
as
I kind
Shimon
of
says,
can.
I think some important precedents have been set. I think the Justice Department, as much as they would like to close the barn doors, I think all the farm animals are already out.